and I appreciate your question. Sorry, I'm frustrating this microphone. That's exactly the question, and you are exactly right. We got here over time with things like that. That plan was not funded, was not fully funded. Looked good at the time, let's take money and let's move it over here. We talked about environmental programs that are now being stolen from, essentially, to plug general fund gaps. And so the environmental cleanup is not happening. This is happening in spades. I do want to say that if I understand that issue correctly, and I've spoken with multiple people about this issue in specific, there's two issues here. There's the pension itself, and then there is, like you said correctly, the legislation that created that cost of living increase above and beyond the pension. And so I do think that that's on the table, and I don't have a good answer for you. I think it's part of the broader budget conversation, but there's the pension question, and then there is the cost of living question, and I think we have to take a look at that. We have to take a look at all of those promises that have been made and say, can we keep this? Is this contractual? And we move forward like that. And I also want to say that I appreciate your service. I appreciate all of the service. I appreciate the service of all of the school teachers in this room. And the fact that you have been treated that way by the state legislature, while I don't know that any of us were there, it's unfortunate and it's totally unacceptable. And again, it's part of that broader conversation of prioritizing. If we have made a promise within the contractual situation of a pension benefit to folks like yourself, that needs to be kept. That's going to mean that we're going to have to make tougher decisions up here to drive those dollars back to you. That's what this conversation is all about.
I find it very interesting that you gentlemen and our mayor are so interested in the jobs coming in on SSA, living jobs, because they are union jobs. I'm really pleased that you're all supporting that. And I also am listening to this with Wisconsin eyes and ears. I'm trying to look for the same playbook that's trying to break the government so that people can't be supported. I am aware that the top 1% of this country now has half of the wealth. I'm aware that the large corporations have never been so flush. Our country is not broke. Our system is broken. And we talk about wants of education for students, wants of a college education, want of care. I think we need to be careful. I would just like to hear, are you operating from the same playbook as the legislature and Governor Walker?
We live in Washington State. I don't even know what the playbook is that we use in Wisconsin. So we're working on our own situation that we have right here. But let's move on to the next question.
Hi, thanks for being here. My name is Terry Bryant Booth, and I live on Central Road. And I am the executive director of the City Nurse Home Care, which employs almost 200 people. Mostly helping folks stay at home. So I'm speaking on behalf of my own organization and nonprofits who are part of that social safety net. And to remind you and ask you a question, that nonprofits really do kind of start at the beginning and help vulnerable people at the least expensive cost. For us, it's taking care of people at home rather than having them go to nursing homes and be on Medicaid rolls in a different fashion. So I will be contacting you. I'm going to be in Olympia in a couple of weeks, so I'm hoping that you can speak with me. But are you willing to listen to the industry's suggestions for saving money?
That's a nice softball. Thank you. Now, of course, we're always trying to work with the industry groups on the reforms and regulations that need to happen on how we can save money at the state level. And one of the things, the visiting nurse program, and one of the things we try to focus in on is keeping a person in their home as long as possible, because it's not only best for the person, it's also better for the taxpayers because it's less expensive to have somebody in their own home. So we try to prioritize
I actually sit on two Health and Human Services committees, and you may already know that and have me scheduled. Yes, As a matter of fact, that's what I've been doing for the last 2 months, is sitting and listening to the folks that provide the care for what, unfortunately, the cliche is the most vulnerable. That's exactly what I've been doing. Sitting and listening to that and trying to figure out how we solve that. I just want to share with you real quickly the conclusion I've come to. That pyramid should look like this, and I'm talking about the PSHS pyramid, with those most vulnerable being the foundation of that and where the bulk of the resources are being driven. And what I've come to see is that this thing is almost inverted. It's almost completely flip-flopped. We have lots of great programs and things up here that we can debate the merits of those programs. But the fact of the matter is that it's become top-heavy to the extent that we're failing to drive those dollars back to those people who need it most. So I'm absolutely open to hearing that, and I've been listening. And the House has actually passed a couple of tax credits, a couple of B&O tax credits for just the services that you're talking about, to try to maximize the resources and limited dollars that you have in the world.
I just have one more little tiny comment. I'm totally supportive of your reform of L&I. Our rates got raised $55,000 this year, so we're paying over $200,000 that we could be using to serve elderly people.
Thanks very much, and thank you for giving us the opportunity to chat with you. My name is Jackie Kaplan-Auerbach, and I'm a voter in Bellingham. I'm an educator, I'm a parent, and I'm a union member. I want to say two comments, or one comment and a question about higher education. I just wanted to note that as a union member in higher education, I have the privilege of being paid at the 38th percentile among my peer universities. I have the privilege of, there was a study that came out recently that said that of 574 university study educators and staff at Western were paid at the 500 level, which means basically we're paid squat. And that's, as union members, if you think that unions are the place that your money is going in the state, it's a misunderstanding. Western Washington University, the requirements to educate a student at Western Washington University has been unchanged since 1990. We are already the most efficient university in the state and one in the country. As a question about higher education, I know one of the things that the state is considering is currently on, I think, a committee in the Senate right now is consideration of House Bill 1822, which would provide the opportunity to accept what's called Western Governors University for careers such as nursing and teaching. This is an online degree looking at the comparison between what we would require a teacher to get to be a certified teacher here now at Western Washington University compared to what Western Governors. They would get effectively 2 classes in my particular discipline where we would require them to actually gain expertise. My concern is that if you're very concerned about education in the state, the primary way to do it is to make sure that we retain the quality of teachers that we have today and not allow them to gain their education out of state online. The same goes for the quality of nursing that we have here. I would like to ensure that should I require medical care in the state of Washington, that the people who are servicing me and helping my family and our needs have the high quality education we've come to expect. And I'd ask how you expect this to happen in the
Thank you for your comments. I did support that bill coming out of our higher education committee because what it does is it opens up another type of learning opportunity for different people. Not everybody has the opportunity in their lives to go to a 4-year traditional university. And so the Western Governors University is set up to incorporate those people who are parents, who are working families, and allow them to get an education. They also do and assess whatever your job has been in the past, your knowledge base, your experiences. They allow those experiences to come in and be used towards your degree. So I believe it's a good integration. We have at our 4-year institutions, we have full classrooms, we have integrated classrooms and online. We have hybrid classes. This just allows students in Washington State to access a fully online education for those students where that's the best way. That's how they learn, or it just works best for their situation. And it's also, it's a quality education, and we can maintain those standards and it allows other people that can't maybe even be able to afford the 4 year to come in and get that education using their past experiences also.
Hi, my name is Holly Kuhn, and I live in Maple Falls. And I have a question, and then maybe a comment. But first, a clarifying question. I think I heard all three of you say earlier that you support the retention of incentive pay for National Board Certified Teachers. Did I hear that right? That's my clarifying question. I think I heard you say that.
I think to clarify where I'm at, I think we need to be looking at teachers and saying, we need to retain quality teachers. We need merit pay, we need incentive pay, and we need to allow the local schools the flexibility to hire the teachers that they need in order to implement the best education for those students. So that, if that means keeping the incentive pay, great. If that means implementing merit pay, I mean, great. If that means, some of the seniority issues that have come up, we need to be looking at those to make sure that our students have the best education and moving, at the best cost to the state.
So there's two bills right now that would suspend the incentive pay for National Board of Teachers. I guess I'm still not sure where you stand on those.
I would have to look at those bills. I don't, without having bill numbers.
Or the issue.
I thank you for your question, and I hope that we're not being ambiguous. I mean, some of these things.
I'm not trying to be.
I know.
I just really don't understand what your position is.
No, and I that's clear, and I appreciate that. I cannot stand here in good faith in front of you and say that I'm 100% for or against that. I can't do it. And this is why I can't do it. We have not solved the problem that is right in front of us, and that is a hundreds of millions worth of dollars of a problem. We now have a 5, and more likely after March 17th, which is the next tax revenue forecast, a $6 billion program. I would be doing you and the rest of the room a disservice if I said, I'm gonna do, at all costs, I'm gonna protect that. I have to take the whole picture into account and say, how are we going to balance this and not on the back of any one group? How are we all going to share this? So I simply cannot stand here and commit to any one person or group and say, this is going to be okay for you. I just don't think it'd be a good person.
I've got two things I want to say to you then. One is when you talk about balancing it on the back of one group, I want you to understand, I hear the word bonus used a lot. My husband and I both work in Whatcom County schools, challenging schools. We're both National Board Certified Teachers. If that incentive pay goes away, that will, coupled with the other funding losses to education, that will result in a 25% loss of our total family income. That's equal to what I spend on my mortgage to own my house, one of the tenets of the middle class dream, and it's also equal to the other two places that I put money, my college, the college fund for my son, and that I put away myself for my retirement. This is not a small, tiny bonus going away. It's 25% of my income. The other thing that I want you to take away from this, please, when you go back to Olympia and you're looking at those two bills, is that the greatest predictor of a good education for our children is an effective educator, an effective teacher in the classroom. In Washington State, we have a system different from the rest of the nation for certifying our National Board of Teachers, a support system, and it is all about improving instruction. That's the whole purpose of that, is to improve instruction.
My question is very simple for each of you. I'd like you to respond to this. What legislation do you support that will enable the creation of jobs? Very simple. What do you support? What will you support?
Well, that's a huge question.
I know
We just saying to cut our answer shorter so we can get to the lines that we have going on here also. Number one thing to create jobs in Washington State long-term, from my perspective, is to balance the budget without raising taxes, to stop the fund balance transfers, and to get us on a sustainable long-term budget so industry and job creators have a stable environment in which to operate. And I think we need to reform workers' comp and reform unemployment insurance and take care of the permitting system in Washington State. So it's a package deal. There's not a silver bullet on how we bring in jobs. But you have to create an environment that is hospitable for job creation and has stability for people to create jobs on a long-term basis.
There was a bill that came through the House recently, and it was entitled the Middle Class Jobs Act. And what it did is it set up a study, and all these different agencies to study how we get jobs. We don't have to study how we get jobs, we know how we get jobs. And so we tried to attach different things onto this bill, because it was an open title, the title was broad enough that we could implement or attach different ideas that we had. Some of those were our workers' comp. Let's look at how we're funding or how we're operating our workers' comp system. Let's look at unemployment insurance. These are the types of things that really impact businesses. We heard, I've been hearing for the last couple of months, businesses that got hit with the new assessment for their unemployment insurance. This is killing these businesses. And that money, the more money you send out in unemployment insurance to pay for a system that's broken, that's money that could be used to create more jobs, to hire more people, and to get projects moving that are going to get people working.
I just want to reiterate, if I sound like a broken record, because I really try to base my comments on the fundamentals. It is the private sector that creates the wealth, that pays the taxes, that allows government to operate. Unless you are the federal government and you are printing money to the tune of $1.5 trillion more every year than you bring in. $14.5 trillion in debt and an untold long-term liability that is compromising all of us. This is right. This bill, entitled the Middle Class Jobs Act, mandated 6 state agencies to go figure out how to create middle-class jobs. He's not making that up. And we managed to kill the bill by injecting common sense and hanging all of our bills inside of it. It went away. There's a philosophical difference here that really needs to be addressed. We can buck the fundamentals of economics as long as we want to, and in the end, there they will be. We have got to get out of the way, to the best of our abilities, of the private sector to produce so that we can create the jobs, so that people can own the homes, and so that teachers can make the salary and teach our kids. That's what has to happen.
Okay, I understand that you said that education should be a priority, and I appreciate everything you've done to make it a priority. But in fact, there are a number of bills passing through right now that are going to seriously compromise educators' ability to provide a quality education to the students. One is that they're looking at cutting K-4 funding, which means much higher class sizes, significantly higher class sizes in those early grades that are so important. And second, you're looking at gutting Washington's key program for providing quality education and ensuring that there's quality teachers in every classroom, and that's the national board process. What I want to know is, we know that this nation's future depends on our ability to create a well-educated workforce. What can we do to ensure that we're not going to end up with a generation of undereducated kids because of these cuts? And I know you said you've tried, but it's been blocked. But what I'm really asking is, how do we get past those blocks? What can we do? What can the people do? What can the large number of teachers here today do? What can we do to be sure that we're not going to have undereducated kids?
We can, like our Washington State Constitution says, go back to the fundamental principles and ask, what are those fundamental principles and how did we get here? I think the short answer to that question is, we allow the private sector to produce. That's what we allow. We grow our economy. There's just no way around it. Like I said, we can buck the fundamentals and we can use these systems that have failed over the course of time and in human history. But the fact of the matter is, the fundamentals remain. And my question is, who can we tax at this point? Who can we tax at this point? We have a $32 billion state general operating budget. My assumption is this: there is always enough money. Always. It is how you prioritize those expenditures.
pay for funding. We had a House bill, part of the supplemental budget that came through, that actually cut that retroactively. Jason and I voted against that because we cannot cut things. Much of this money had already gone down to the school districts. The school districts had already hired employees. And then the state legislature, the House, came and cut that funding retroactively. We voted against that because that is not a good way to do your business. That is not a good way to tell state agencies or the schools, here's your money, use it to better education, and then to come back 4 months later or 3 months later and say, actually, we need that money back. I'm sorry. So we voted against that, and ultimately, if we want to get that money to stay there, we need to change a few seats in Olympia.
I'm Bob Rosenberg. I live in Lynden. I teach at the community college, or I've been some time now. I got 4 points. I'll try to make them under a minute. Thanks for serving. Oh, this is it. Thanks for serving. You guys probably aren't going to win. And it's a tough job. Prioritizing budgets. Yes, we all have to do it. But when you look at things across the state, as much as I'd like you to say, education is going to be top priority, I recognize we can't just do that and fully fund it and leave correction paying out there with less money, nor can we leave the safety net with less money. So I can understand the need to look at it all in a package at the end and decide where the cuts will be. As much as I like education, it's fully funded. So, second of all, tuition is one way to keep us operating, to raise that for students. And you've already mentioned this, I just want to second it. The more we raise tuition, the more we might make some students less able to attend. Those who do attend will have a higher debt burden at the end, probably. So we have to keep that in mind as we're trying to do this. Performance pay for teachers, tenure, those sorts of things. We've got to find a way to measure teacher effectiveness in a way that's valid, that actually works. And that's a tough job to do. So before we start saying we're going to lay people off on some particular basis of performance, we've got to have a good measuring instrument. And lastly, every time we lay off a public employee, we ended a job, so it's not like laying off public employees automatically enhances the economy. It also is part of our problem with our unemployment rate right now, is we're laying off so many public employees, it's affecting the unemployment rate. So it's not just an automatic solution. And we just need to keep that in mind. Which ones don't we? The corrections people, the teachers, the law enforcement. We don't need.
I'm also very grateful for the opportunity to be heard and grateful that you're here to clarify things with us and listen to us. I'm a National Board Certified Teacher in the Mount Baker School District. I've been teaching there 18 years. I'm bringing up 3 kids. And our district has a very disparate income. We have one school that is extremely challenged. And I watched my 3 kids went there. And I would see an excellent teacher that taught my oldest kid at the first available minute go to a less challenging school because, frankly, it was easier and there was no incentive to stay at this very, very needy school. It was very disheartening. With the challenging schools incentive, that turned around in our district, and suddenly experienced qualified teachers were moving to the most needy school. And personally, I this year took on the challenge of taking the kids that were turned out of our closed alternative school and teaching them, and I have to admit that part of the reason why I did it was because there was an incentive. And that incentive, compared to the additional hours I am working with these very needy kids whose parents were in jail, whose parents had drug addictions, who were trying to keep from running away with 30-year-old boyfriends, it's 4 hours more a day just in time, but it's much more in anguish. And as I'm looking at that coming incentive for the amount I work go away, and I have a kid who's going to college next year and another one soon to follow, it's really a temptation for me to leave that very necessary job to get an after-school job to support my kids through school. And I just firmly believe the research shows that when you put that education is the thing that can combat poverty, and if we don't put our resources into educating our very poor, they will cost us so much more
in the correction system, in all kinds of other systems. And so my question is, if we do, I think this incentive pay is a bargain, and if we do lose that, what are your alternatives to address the rising needs of our growing poverty population?
I think on more the local level, Mount Baker School District is in an interesting situation with the way that they're funded. Because Bellingham School District, they have a tax base there. Mount Baker doesn't. And so part of the problem that we're seeing is a lot of our forest land, our working forests, go into pay for our schools. We're pulling more and more of our working forests out of production at the state level. That reduces the funding for education, especially in areas like Mount Baker, which is so dependent on that. But also, one of the things that I support is the levy equalization. And this allows us to, the money that's generated off of levy taxes goes in, and it can be used by districts such as Mount Baker. And so we need to make sure that when it comes to like the forestry type things, we keep that funding source intact. We allow working forests to continue to pay for our schools.
Yeah, and really quick on that also, Washington State ranks about somewhere between 12 and 18 in total tax burden per family compared to our other states, you know. So we're right up towards the top in terms of total tax load, and yet you keep having people coming and talking about how we rank at the bottom end when it comes to compensation for people doing jobs, when it comes to access to higher ed. And what that really means is we're not prioritizing our dollars the way we should have been over the past 10 years. And people ask, what can you do? Well, look at the things that we can prioritize in a different way in Washington State. And I asked public school teachers, would you mind being moved over to the PED to save $90 million a year? Would you mind shifting over to a health savings account that works for your family and saving the state that $100 million a year that we can then put back into education in other ways? When you go and visit the Department of Ecology field office in Bellingham, it's in Fairhaven. It has plate glass windows on ground level with granite countertops. You go out to the Conservation District, they're at High Notes Corner, you know, using office furniture they got probably bought and used on Craigslist or something somewhere. So you look at how we prioritize our funding, and it's not the one thing. It's 1,000 solutions of how we reprioritize our spending. And we've gotten so out of touch, I believe, over the past few years when you had those massive increases in state spending. Nobody was keeping track of where the dollars were going. They're just sending them out the door, and now we have to go and pull some of those back. And will that be difficult for some people? Yes, it will be. Because there will be people at the end of the day who might not be working in that Department of Ecology field office in Bellingham. Because we prioritize and say, we'd rather use those dollars for K-12. That would be a decision that we'll have to make as a legislator, and that's our job. So I appreciate the question. I'm not a math major, and I don't want to get people mad at me at the end, but I am seeing we have about 25 minutes left on our rental of this room, and a lot of people online, so we're going to work really hard to keep our comments very short. And I ask the people online to keep your comments very short also, so we can try to get to as many people as possible.
Hi, my name is Chris. I live in Bellingham. I'm a nurse at Interfaith Community Health Center. I'm here to talk about, again, the difficult budget resource decisions. Continued cuts with Medicaid reimbursements and possibly basic health and GAU ultimately cost the state more money. Studies have shown with people who are receiving medical coverage from the state, a small percentage of the patients account for a very significant portion of the cost. And studies have also shown that intensive case and closer case management of these patients significantly reduces healthcare costs. Interfaith has started many different programs like this, ER diversion, closer case management for chronic diseases, and we've considerably decreased the amount of unnecessary hospitalizations and unnecessary ER visits. This is saving the state millions and millions of dollars alone just from our clinic. With the reduced reimbursement rates and cutbacks, we have fewer resources to do this, and ultimately these patients won't get the close monitoring that they need that will lead to increased costs to the state. So my question is, do you feel that basic health and GAU will still be viable after the June budget?
I have serious doubts about GAU in particular, which is General Assistance Unemployable is the name of the program. To be honest with you, that is the one the governor has cut in her budget for the past 3 or 4 years, every single year, zeroing it out. Basic health plan we're working on VHP is to restructure the VHP, to transition it more to a premium subsidy match So people are matched in healthcare, almost using a connector or what you're hearing about the national level on the, not the connector, but what's the other national healthcare? Exchange, thank you very much, the exchange to help people out in that fashion. So it's going to be a tough one. And the reason why these two issues are on the board is because they're state-only programs. And so as we do our budget, you have federal programs, federal match programs, and you have your state-only programs. And GAU and basic health plan are examples of state-only programs.
But you realize that you work towards getting patients off of assistance and back working, not long-term disability.
I understand the programs.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Joe Knight. I live in Wilson, and I have a couple short comments and a couple quick questions.
Just out of respect for everybody else, just keep them really quick. I hate to do that.
So I want everybody to know in the room that any bill that's proposed that has an impact of greater than $50,000, financial or fiscal notes have to be prepared, and those are online and appended to or the bills. You can go out there and look at it. For example, Ms. Rover Street 1671 has 42 pages of fiscal notes and will cost $15 million to implement through by in 2015. It's on the paper. Okay, but that's just my comment. Now, the question is really about 1537. It's much simpler bill. It's the one about driver's ed. And in this case, it would add, based on fiscal notes, through 2015, you would take in revenues for this program of $665,000 and expenditures of about $800,000 for a net loss to the state of $148,000. Also, it would add 6.5 FTEs over that. In other words, yes, you're going to add to the state numbers. You're going to lose money on it. The real safety question is which police or public safety organizations support it, and why do you want to turn over driver's training to amateurs?
We got the question. I'm sorry, not being rude, we just have a lot of people.
Thank you for your question. You're exactly right. There's fiscal notes attached behind it. And that theoretically, you actually stole my thunder, sir. Thank you. When you have a bill that state government abhors, they tack a 42-page fiscal note on the back. That's the bill that was on the screen. That's the bill that works for you in the city of Lynden, in the city of Blaine, in the city of Everson, in the city of Bellingham, in the city of Ferndale, and it also works for businesses. The governor's office hated it. They called me and told me as much. And so you bury it with a fiscal note. And a lot of that fiscal note will say undeterminate but not zero. That's how you kill a bill. That's the dirty little secret in Olympia. Let me give you another dirty little secret really quickly in Olympia. When you're in the majority, you don't like a bill, and it has that fiscal note, you sit in committee and you say, I reject that fiscal note. I am not making this up. I reject that fiscal note. So you know what they did? They reworked the fiscal note.
So you're
And then you know what?
Yeah. You're questioning the integrity of the people who prepare those notes, is what you're saying.
So in the end, this bill comes to the Appropriations Committee that I'm sitting on, and there's no fiscal note attached. It's gone. So he's exactly right. Sometimes that's used is a weapon, and it's really unfortunate. Good legislation dies sometimes for bad fiscal notes. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is James, and I live in Bellingham, and I'm president of the Washington State Association of the Deaf, WSAD. And I came to speak to you regarding education of deaf children. All over Washington State, we have pretty much lousy services for deaf children. I see the education of these deaf kids and they're not learning. And a lot of that is due to language. The qualifications of the interpreters that are working with these deaf children, their inability to sign. The deaf children sign, but the interpreters cannot communicate with them because they have no credentials and no language at all. So there's a communication barrier. And that's within school districts all over the state of Washington. We tried to set it up, and the legislature passed a program requiring certification for interpreters across the state, and it basically has just gone nowhere. The opportunities for deaf children have really drastically decreased because of the inability to learn in education. So I'm hoping you can help us go back, look at those bills again, be involved with the education of deaf children so our deaf children can improve and be as equally as educated as all the other children here in the state of Washington. Is I'd also like to ask you to contact the deaf community, contact WSAD, talk to us about these issues related to deaf education and the deaf community here in Washington State. We're a hidden disability that doesn't get much attention, and I understand that there are budget issues, but we're happy to provide any education you might need.
Well, I appreciate you coming here and just coming and talking with us. We definitely want to make sure that in our public schools that we have educators that are qualified and educators that give a good education to everybody. I have a sister who's also special needs. She has Down syndrome, and so I've seen the effects through the Lynden School District. And we have some great teachers, and we need to make sure.
That's separate. That's really separate. You're talking about a very separate issue on special education and children with Down syndrome. I'm talking about communication barriers. I'm not just talking about disabilities. It's a separate issue altogether, so don't confuse those two.
One quick comment on the issue you bring up is a very good one, and how we prioritize funding for those people who, by no fault of their own, are in need of an extra service. We come the most vulnerable sometimes. We call people who might have an issue with hearing or with sight, and we have to get back to funding those programs to help people. Again, I'll go back to we rank about 16th in the nation in total tax load on our citizens, and yet we're not using those dollars effectively. And at the end of the day, our job is going to be and actually go to the budget and say, what's a bigger priority for us? Is a bigger priority for us funding this program, or is a bigger priority having interpretive services for language barriers required through Medicaid in all of our doctor's offices, which is a huge expense to the people of Washington State. So what's more important? How do we balance out those things as we move forward? And those are the kinds of things that
Another issue that's not necessarily.
No, I understand it's a different issue, but as we prioritize funding, maybe the money goes to the Medicaid interpretive services, or maybe the money goes to the organization to help kids learn who have that who are deaf. So that's what I'm talking about. I understand it's different. But it's a place where we put state dollars, and how do I prioritize? Which program gets the money, and which program does not at the end of the day? That's really one of our jobs.
My name is Shelley Zilstra. I live here in Lynden, and this morning I had the privilege of going to the Family Caregiver Conference in Bellingham, Washington, where I worked with them to do some training. And they are kind of the unsung heroes of our communities. They save the tax dollars, thousands of dollars in nursing home costs. And there are two bills which really, not two bills, there's two laws which support their efforts. One is the Family Caregiver Support Program bill, and the other is the Senior Citizen Services Act bill, and I would urge you to support both of those. Cutting those is penny wise, pound foolish.
Great comment. Did you come with Victoria, or are you two together?
I came by myself.
Oh, let's go to Victoria right after, because a lot of those issues are similar, if that's okay.
Thank you. My name is Victoria Gorber, and I wanted to just speak in terms of priorities. I wanted to speak related to trying to help people who are struggling, elders, struggling people with chronic disabilities. Washington State has done terrific work over the last 2 decades to spend smarter by helping people stay at home where they want to be, out of institutions. There are a variety of programs. She mentioned a couple of them. Individuals who have taken care of themselves over time often find themselves in a situation where they go into the institution, and even if they have a lot of money in the bank, it usually takes about 9 months for that money to go away and for folks to have to look to Medicaid for support. So it asks you to think about, as cuts are being made, and of course they must be made, to avoid the multiplier effect for people. It may sound to you like kind of different programs, but really they're all impacting the same person, whether it's a copay for Medicare drugs, whether it's a cut to personal care hours, whether it's
skilled therapies. These all funnel, and some individual who's being cut 8 times. People that are our clients often say, we know that the state's in a tough spot and we want to do our part. But how can you try to avoid making them do their part 5 times?
Great points, and thank you for the comments, and thanks for everything you do. And this is going to, we all realize, this is going to be a much bigger issue in coming years. How we take care of the long-term care of our citizens going forward. Keeping people in their homes as long as possible. Block granting funds back to local communities to handle it, instead of running it through the system as we currently do. As we move forward, we're in the crisis stage right now, so we're going to begin transitioning to different ways of doing it. But as we transition, we need to transition smarter also to how we handle these situations. And it deals with rules and regulations. It deals with the liability laws. It deals with so many different things that we have to be able to handle to deliver those services in a different way. And that's going to be the true challenge for this legislature for the next 2 years and for the ones that follow. How we structurally change our service delivery to transform that mindset in Olympia and trust people at the local level to deliver services and deliver the products to the people on the ground. And a scary statistic is we have seen a reduction in state employees across the state over the past 4 years. It's down from a very high after the big increase. But while we've cut state employees statewide, the number of state employees in Olympia has actually increased. And so it's one of those things where you look at it and say, where people are actually providing service on the ground, helping the individual out, we're cutting them while we're adding more money and more people and more beautiful buildings you're all paying for in Olympia. So that's the other thing that has to change in terms of how we think about this.
Hello, my name is Cindy McNeely. I live here in Lynden. I've lived here for 40 years. And I want to thank you for the opportunity for us to join in with the interpreters and have the staff group here to address you as well. Looking at your PowerPoint as you started this, talking about DSHS and social health net safety nets, my concern is that with the budget cuts, it's happening to, you're cutting 6 state centers that serve the deaf community across the state of Washington. That budget cut, there was already several budget cuts in the past several years. And one center serves 4 counties. The one up here serves Whatcom, Skagit, Snohomish, Island, and San Juan County. And my concern is, without those services, without that outreach to the deaf and hard of hearing and the elderly who have lost their hearing within these 4 counties, there will be more and more loss of services. There'll be less deaf children who will be diagnosed as deaf early, which is crucial to their language. There'll be less and less services to deaf senior citizens in the area. And these deaf people will be lost, just wind up falling through the cracks. These budgets have already been cut, and now they're going to be cut even more. And I want to know how these services are going to be protected through DSHS.
And this is the difficult situation that defines what's going on in here right now. As I might have alluded to earlier, I sit on two Health and Human Services committees, and these are the decisions that we're having to make. It's brutal. It's absolutely brutal. And I sat down with Representative Katie, who's my Democratic counterpart, and we went through our portion of the Health and Human Services appropriations budget, and we have to make decisions just like that. And I'll give you an example. We were working, our starting point was the governor's budget. And we had to go through and look at certain things and say, are we going to maintain the governor's budget? Are we not going to take as much, which then means we have to find it somewhere else. And so, again, I cannot commit to any one person or group because of the dynamic nature of this process and because of the depth and breadth of the problem. And so, I can't speak for Senator Ericksen or Representative Biles, but I beg the patience of the citizens that we serve as we work through this process and we fully acknowledge the needs that are out there and the job before us of trying to prioritize with those limited resources. I'll give you an example of where Representative Katie and I agreed. It was the child advocacy centers. We know here is the Bridget Collins house. That was slated by the governor to be eliminated completely. This is a house that combines social services, law enforcement, all different modes and branches of government that deals with children who have had horrible things done to them. And instead of moving them from police station to social service to psychologist, it's a one-stop shop. Our recommendation was to salvage that. Because these kids, by no fault of their own, have found themselves in a horrible situation, and we're trying to minimize that impact. Those are the decisions that we're faced with every day. I will keep your comments in mind as we move forward. And again, we continue to try to reprioritize. And I'm sorry if this comment frustrates you. It's where we are, and it's the size of the problem, and it's how we're trying to work through the issues. So I appreciate your patience.
You asked who can we tax that we're all being taxed? About the top 1%. Make them pay their fair share. You say that we all need to be willing to chip in. What are you chipping in as government officials? How about your Cadillac medical coverages, your pensions which are more than what most teachers make in their livings? Second, my other point is, you're looking at, one of you made a comment about adding private education. Are you in favor of the voucher system?
I would be in favor of the voucher system. I think it's a system that allows competition in the schools. It allows us to focus on education, making sure that our students are coming out the most educated. And whether that's a charter school, whether that's a voucher going out, whether that's a public school, we need to make sure we're producing highly educated students. Because as we've all heard, and as we've all acknowledged, the way we move forward is having an educated population. We hear a lot about tax loopholes and these people that aren't paying money. And so let's look at some of the tax loopholes that we have. We currently just passed a couple bills out of the House. I voted for it, Jason voted for it. I think they went out unanimously, which created a couple more loopholes, and it was for-profit service centers that provided safety net help. And so this gave them a B&O tax credit. So this is a loophole that we just created to help these service centers, these for-profit service centers, provide the services at a much more economical cost. And so these are some of the loopholes. We have a big loophole, which is when you go to the grocery store and you buy bread and milk, you don't pay sales tax on that. That's a big loophole. So I suppose we could close those tax loopholes, but I don't think that's where we want to go as a state. Once again, it's prioritizing and where we spend that money.
You didn't answer my question about would you be willing to look at your pensions and your Cadillac medical benefits?
Yep. We're working very hard to get health savings accounts for all state employees, which would be a great thing for legislators to take advantage of. And I wish that we could change our legislative package from defined benefit to defined contribution. And I'd be happy to sponsor that legislation for all legislators to require that. And I actually did sponsor legislation requiring all legislators purchase their health care in the individual market, so they understand what it's like out there. For the rest of the world, they have to go buy their health care. Unfortunately, the majority party refused to move those bills forward, so we'll keep working on it.
And ma'am, as we walk back, I wanted to answer you also. My answer is yes, absolutely. And as a matter of fact, is about what we put our own pay and benefit package, and I don't think there's a legislator down there, frankly, that wouldn't do it. We're bound through the, there may be somebody.
Hi, my name is Kevin Candela, and I'm a National Board Certified Teacher in the Mount Baker School District. And I'm sure that you're aware that National Board Certified Teachers have demonstrated the highest levels of competence and effectiveness in terms of student learning, and that they're also in positions of leadership in their districts. So I'd like to offer a suggestion, which I think may be unpopular with many of my colleagues, and then a question to follow that up. When you get around to looking at these two bills which have proposed eliminating the incentive pay for National Board Certified Teachers, a reasonable compromise may be to eliminate the challenging schools incentive and maintain all or at least a portion of the base incentive. If that is not attainable, my question is, what would be your backup plan for moving forward with educational reform if you find that the teachers in the state that are currently in leadership positions are feeling somewhat embittered and possibly immobile?
I guess I don't follow the question either. If teachers are bitter, what is my plan B?
I'm saying there's a reasonable compromise to be found, and if that is not attainable, what would be the plan for moving forward with ed reform?
Well, that is a huge, ed reform is a huge question. And we've already seen some legislation that's moving in that direction. Again, we have to sit down and the first question we have to ask ourselves is it always more money? Do we need to put more money into what we're already doing? So I think the first thing we need to do and really define reform is to look at what we're doing and ask, is this working? We can throw money at any given program or situation all day long, but if it's not working, we have to ask ourselves, what is and what isn't? So
regardless of whether it's money or not, I mean, people you're counting on to lead educational reform are exactly the same people who are having, 10 to 20% reduction in their salaries if these incentive pays go away. So
I say this with all due respect, sir. 9.6% of this county does not have a job. And so as a public employee, I can say this. I say thank you to the public that employs me. And I am fully aware of the fact that I may suffer a pay reduction or a benefit reduction or possibly lose my job. But ultimately, we all, and someone touched on it, we all have to share in this. We really do. And so I don't have the solution to fix a problem that has taken years to create. And it's because we're failing to address that, and we've touched on many of the issues here today, that we have to stand here year after year after year while we try to create that sustainability, that predictability in our state budget process. So if I have to take a pay reduction, and I also want to follow up on my comment, I did opt out of my state retirement as a state legislator. And I did take an unpaid leave from my job, and I'm taking a pay cut, essentially. There are people down there who have the best of intentions. Make no mistake. That does not mean that we have all of the solutions. That means that we're willing to go down there into the breach and say, how do we make this better? And unfortunately, like I've said multiple times, this is going to involve some short-term pain. And I think your question really is, how do we do that? What does that look like? And how do we make sure that it's as equitable as we can possibly handle?
So would you support amending those bills?
Okay, we need to keep moving. Thank you.
Thank you for coming down here to help us coordinate state and local action. As you know, the jail in Whatcom is overcrowded. We're trying to decide to build a new one and how big it should be. As I'm sure you know, when we cut public services and public education, the rates of violent crime drop out and incarceration all increase. So I guess I'm asking again, do you think it is something that we should work to build this bigger jail, or is there a way that we can help get the funding to fund these state programs from over there? Is there something we can do?
I think part of the issue is with the jail, that's going to be mostly a local issue. We're going to be dealing with the state, like you said, the funding of how do we make sure that our students that go through our education system don't end up in jail. And that's quality education. And so making sure, once again, it comes down to our priorities. Do we spend our money in education, or do we spend it as venture capitalists in the private market? I don't think the state should, as Senator Ericksen said, I don't think we should be doing venture capitalists. There are plenty of companies in the private sector that work, investors that work in venture capital. That's not some mistake. We should use that money and invest in education. That should be our investment. Invest in education, invest in public safety. And I think if we work on that, then that's going to take us, and that's going to alleviate some of the burden. But currently we have an issue with overpopulation of our prison, and so we need to address that at the local issue.
at the local level.
My name is Doug Ferris. I live in Ferndale, and I just wanted to say that I'm doing my part to reduce the state budget by about $80,000 a year by not educating my children in the public system. I keep them at home. So on top of that, I pay $3,000 at least in property taxes to the state for the education of other people's children, as well as paying an additional amount to buy the curriculum to teach my own children. But my question deals with being forced into taking insurance based upon the mandate from the federal government that I have to buy insurance. I have never used insurance. I've always paid for any doctor visits. I've always paid for everything. And I've lived well below poverty level for many, many years. And my question to you is, what will you be doing to propose to the legislature in the coming months to keep those of us who don't use the system from having to be forced to use that system and to pay into it?
Yeah, on the National Healthcare Reform Act, we have introduced legislation to say Washington State does not have to participate in it, saying the individual mandate is unconstitutional. Ron McKenna, our state attorney general, will join the lawsuit. That'll work its way through the federal courts. However they decide at the Supreme Court level, we still have to deal with certain issues of healthcare at the state level, and that's why we have a 9-point plan, actually, on healthcare reform to make it more accessible and affordable to the people of Washington State, not by making the government bigger, but by empowering the individual consumer through issues such as comprehensive medical malpractice reform, health savings accounts making more available, repealing items like certificate of need. It's a complete plan on healthcare reform that's targeted towards people who want to have more say over their healthcare dollars. And one of the things we have to handle is making insurance be insurance again, not a $5 copay, but prepaid medical care. And that's really what's hurting us in the insurance world right now. And we can talk about, I'll give you a quick White House example, and I'll be quiet. At the White House, we're talking about obesity care and how you can have people live a healthier lifestyle. The way you do it is by giving them a financial incentive to live a healthier lifestyle through their insurance rates and other activities. And that's what we're focused in on. Individual, market-based control for healthcare to make it more affordable, more accessible to you while blocking the federal government. We have about 5 more minutes left, just so we're aware. We had the place till 3. They've agreed to keep it open until 3:34. So.
Hi, my name is Tiffany Bennett. I'm a Bellingham resident and a member of Social Alternative. I just want to thank you all for being here and for sharing our view that our education is very important, including higher education and K-12. Representative Overstreet, you mentioned during the PowerPoint presentation that taxpayers have definitely voted and showed that it's pretty clear, like, taxes are not going to be something that we really want at this point. That voters are showing that we clearly can't afford taxes right now. You asked, at this point, who can we tax? And you mentioned that it's all about prioritizing our budget and figuring out what programs are going to be more beneficial to cut and which ones are more important to keep. And I think that all of them are important to keep. Education, healthcare services, social services, all of those are really important. And it is really our decision to say, like, which one are we going to take from? And so my proposal is that we don't cut from any of them. I say no on any budget cuts. It's not the working class, it's not the students, it's not the teachers, it's not the middle class that got us into this budget deficit. And I don't think it's our responsibility to take us out, and we shouldn't be the ones suffering to pay these taxes and to have our budgets cut because of this. I really think that we do need to focus on taking away the tax breaks from corporations and taxing the top percentage, 1% of wealthy folks who got us into this budget deficit.
Good afternoon, Mr. Erickson, Vines, and Overstreet. Before I address you three, I'd like to say, as a past board member of Mount Baker School District, thank you to all the Mount Baker teachers that showed up today. You're absolutely the best in the county and the state of Arizona. You three gentlemen talk about budget priorities. How about closing some of our tax loopholes, and I've got a short list for you here. Giveaways to Wall Street banks at $100 million per year. The B&O deduction on interest for first-time home mortgages.
Thank you. This is the third question. We've had the list read. I'd like to keep going a couple minutes here, so you get to your question. I appreciate it.
I've been here all the entire time. You have not had the list written. A sales tax exemption on electric customers.
I don't need to be read by other people waiting, so if you just get to your question. I know your list is very long.
Yes, it is, and I don't know why that hasn't come up in your discussions this afternoon on how you can't do that. I'd also like to know if you understand who the largest employer in this county is. It happens to be Western Washington University, yet you are, there's proposals to cut funding once again. You're asking state employees to go back, since they didn't get a raise 2 years ago, is taking concessions of 3.3% in wages. This time, and plus 3% in their health care benefits, you're wanting them to go back. You're not only just supporting this, you're sponsoring the bill to send them back to the table and waste more state taxpayers' money on helping them get additional concessions when we make 25% less than comparable positions in private sector. So I'd like to know why you are doing that and undermining the economy in this county thus far, and why you're not taking the salary.
Thanks very much for the question, ma'am. I wasn't trying to be rude. We're trying to work our way through because I have other people also waiting in line. So, people of Washington State said 1053, 2/3 vote to raise taxes. There aren't 2/3 vote in the legislature to raise taxes. And some people call it closing the tax loophole. I call it keeping the jobs at Alcoa, because Alcoa is on the our dairy farmers here. It's allowing people to keep more of their money. It's not a loophole. It's simply a way that you get your tax code, and when you raise their taxes, it requires a 2/3 vote, and they're not proposing looking to do that.
I'd also like to be very clear, and I actually have the document with me if anybody wants to see it, but the majority in Olympia is going exactly, where you went, is going exactly the opposite way. The total bills, the total dollar amount that the bills propose that would create or expand existing tax loopholes is $130 million, and every single one of them is coming from the majority party. They're going the other way.